Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Warcraft video. So, the Shadowlands are the realms of the dead, meaning that we are going to have a lot of returning characters in this expansion, some of whom, of course, haven't been breathing for quite some time indeed. Now, between them and all of those characters who will be joining us on our trip to the Shadowlands, this expansion is set to have a pretty ridiculous number of characters, a lot of stuff happening, and a lot of characters actually returning, many of which I think will be essential to the future lore of the game. Now, of course, you can improve your own lore by skilling up now with Skillshare, today's sponsor, where the first 1,000 of you who click my link will get 2 months of premium for free. Even past that, it's only $10. Now, I've got great news for you. So, Thomas Frank, the guy who did the excellent productivity masterclass that, as I said in a previous episode, helped me reboot myself over last Christmas, he's got a new one, Building Habits That Stick. And seriously, it is great. It is all about solving that problem of you just not really being in as control as you think you are. I mean, so often, right, like we autopilot ourselves in a direction that we don't really want to go in. And I mean, I absolutely struggle with that, especially outside of work and especially with lockdown. Just kind of making our day-to-day habits and maybe our failures there be kind of more important and impactful than ever. So I think what he's done there is absolutely worth your time. And the first 1,000 of you who click my link, you'll get 2 months of Skillshare Premium for free. And after that, it's only $10 a month. So it's totally worth doing. A big thank you to them for being a great resource and also for helping our team. And with that said, let's get into the video. Kael'thas, yeah, we gotta start with him. He's one of the most screwed over characters, I believe, in the game's lore. Moving, from who he was in Warcraft 3 to the Burning Crusade. I mean, that was an expansion that just trampled over the lore to a legendary degree. 2 versions of him have been data mined so far in Shadowlands. One of them is carrying a tombstone. Now, that is likely the penance being dealt to him in Revendreth, and then there's one model of him fully armored. Now, from what I understand, when we first sort of see him, well, really what he'll have been doing in Revendreth is undergoing penance. Now, that we see him in armor, that maybe suggests that he's redeemed. Now, usually that either means the soul's exit of Revendreth or becoming a Venthyr, so that's usually what it means, though with a character as important as kel'thuzad, I mean, I've got to imagine that something more could actually happen with him. Now, first, he was one of Illidan's companions from ages ago. Illidan, of course, is a character who's back, but is sealed away, right? So perhaps they might actually meet in the future, and maybe, as a part of his penance, we'll actually get to see more of what went down in Outland. Maybe this is actually Blizzard's opportunity to sort of update some of the worst lore in the game. Certainly, it's what they did for Illidan with Legion, so it makes sense they do it now for him. And then if he's redeemed, I mean, could he actually come back? I mean, it would be quite a stretch. I'm sure though many High Elf fans would not mind Anduin forgiving kel'thuzad based on him doing what he did because of, well, the big ism he received from Garithos in War 3, and maybe that could mean Alliance High Elves, but you know what? Somehow, I kind of doubt Blizzard will do that one. And still on the topic of Illidan's friends, we've got Lady VASHJ, yes, well, Baroness VASHJ as she's called now, she's going to be back. And it's been confirmed that even in Warcraft 3, she was still serving as Shara, right? That Illidan in War 3 was just a means to an end. Well, Shara and Sylvanas struck up a deal during BFA. Sylvanas knew all about the Shadowlands at that point in BFA, so what if VASHJ is actually on Sylvanas' side right now, even though ultimately she might be a double agent for Shara? That could be pretty spicy, and let's be real, Sylvanas and Shara, they're totally characters who would betray each other in an instant. And it's interesting, if you look at VASHJ's model, you see she's like an undead, but she's also wearing sort of, I'd say, Sylvanas-looking armor. So that aspect certainly is food for thought. But past that, I mean, with Illidan off in jail with Sargeras, right, imprisoning him, clearly being held for a future storyline, I think it certainly is interesting that Blizzard have decided to just bring back Illidan's old squad and put them in the game. So that's also food for thought. And with that, let's actually hop over to a totally different group of characters. Bolvar is going to serve as the Magni of this expansion, basically, right? Like Khadgar, the guy who leads us, spurs us to action. But what's really going to be interesting is what Bolvar is this, okay? Is this the Bolvar from Wrath of the Lich King and before, who's, a nice guy? Or is this the cold, calculating, a bit mean Legion-era Bolvar? The guy who sort of tried to wipe out Light's Hope Chapel and raise Tyrion as a Death Knight? Maybe dropping that helm has mellowed him out a bit, but I'll tell you what could also mellow him out. him meeting Talia, because yes, Talia from BFA is supposedly his daughter, though she doesn't know it. So yes, Bolvar could reunite with his daughter, maybe that would mellow him out, maybe we could even find who her mother is, right? Many people actually speculate that to be Calia Menethil, which would then make Talia the daughter of both human kingdoms, and that could really set her up for a more major role in the future, so that could be interesting. I mean, hell, there's even been some speculation that Anduin and Talia could meet up someday, which would mean that you could sort of see as being like the unification of two human kingdoms, which could be interesting and maybe a little bit spicy for those currently in Lord Ron with where that Calia plotline could go. But anyway, with that, let's move over to another one. So, Uther, he's back, and unlike with BFA, where he just magically had his crypt revamped for seemingly no reason, well, this time he's actually back, and what's wild is he actually starts off as what we think of as being a bad guy. He's one of the Kyrians who's went against the pure subservience and the cleansing of one's personality and past that the main Kyrians sort of preach. So that will be a great storyline to see unfold. But past that though, it's Uther, he's back. He could give us this great insight into Arthas as a character, and maybe the introduction of Uther could even lead to a reintroduction of Arthas, though that would be treading on thin ice. That's actually something that Blizzard have acknowledged. Being such an iconic character, Blizzard have said that they would not want to trample on Arthas' legacy, but still, if they did have a good plan for Arthas, then certainly having Uther be back in the game, well, that would help actually bring Arthas out. Past that then, we might even get to learn a little bit more about Frostmourne from Uther. I mean, what are the mechanics of Frostmourne? Is it actually a mini Maw? How does its connection to the Maw, to the Shadowlands work? Pretty interesting. And then, with that said, there is one more Scourge guy to talk about, and believe me, he's a big one. Yep, kel'thuzad. He is back, and he's actually involved in the storyline of Maldraxxus. Now, there's going to be a lot to unpack with this character. I mean, first, there's his phylactery, right? I mean, surely that could be his tether to reality. You know, could he actually succeed in his Shadowlands plan and then use his phylactery to actually, return to the plane of the living, right? I wouldn't be surprised if that was what he was doing. I mean, he's supposed to be this big brain intelligent character. So there's that. Of course, though, he could just be working for Sylvanas and the Jailer, and maybe he could, lead the undead invasion of the pre-patch. It's kind of hard to know exactly, but he's an extremely significant character to the lore, and he is a character of immense power, and he's also a schemer, right? And that means there's just so many ways that Blizzard could take this character. But next, let's take a break from these guys. Let's go to the trolls, because there is so much troll stuff to talk about. Hakkar, yes, he is back. When we last left off, we defeated Jindo, and basically Jindo was trying to suck the power out of Hakkar. And when we freed Hakkar, he disappeared and sort of left us for later. Well, later is now, and he is back. Right now, we basically know nothing of his plan for the Shadowlands, just that he appears in the other side, which is Bomsamdi's pocket dimension of the Shadowlands. So that's what's going on. Hakkar is there, along with mueh'zala, who is the character that's now confirmed actually whispered Sylvanas' name into the ear of a dying Vol'jin at the start of Legion, and through that we can sort of deduce that mueh'zala is working for the Jailer. So does that mean that Hakkar is also working for the Jailer? Is he in the other side in league with mueh'zala? Right now we can't say for sure, but I do know that a lot of blood trolls died in BFA, right? So it could just be that there's this massive power struggle within the other side, right? Where it's mueh'zala versus Hakkar versus Bomsamdi, and whoever actually wins there gets control of the troll's own pocket dimension of the Shadowlands. I mean, traditionally, that area has been Bomsamdi's, and he does appear in this expansion after presumably surviving an assassination attempt by Nathanos and his company. So who's to say, really? I mean, it could be this massive sort of multi-side battle. The more clear option is that it could just be, Vol'jin, Razan, us, Bomsamdi, against the evil troll Loa, so, Hakkar and mueh'zala. That would be simple, but if we totally destroyed them, I mean, that would be two potentially major characters down, just gone, thrown in the bin. Hard to say exactly, but there is one thing for sure here. The future of the troll afterlife is very much at stake here. Now, if you'd like to learn more about mueh'zala, then I'd recommend checking out this video that we did a short while ago. Okay, so that's the spooky Loa dealt with. Now, Vol'jin, he is returning in Shadowlands after having embarked on a quest to learn the true nature of his strange post-death state. As for what's going to happen to him, well, my personal suspicion here is that he's actually going to become the new Loa of Kings, and that will be his future. in the past, right, the Zandalari, they hadn't paid much attention to Bomsamdi, so, you know, Vol'jin and Bomsamdi, they're old allies, as we know from, like, the novels and just the in-game lore. So I've got to wonder if having the Loa of Kings and Loa of Death in unison as allies, like, what would that actually mean for the trolls in their future? Maybe Vol'jin could help TYRANDE get out of the weird bind she's found herself in via her father. So there's that. Then there's also the old Loa of Kings, Razan, who apparently also made a deal with Bomsamdi. Now, bar datamine text saying that, we've got really very little else. Suffice to say, the other side dungeon, that's going to have a hell of a lot of lore, and there still is that lingering question of who is Bomsamdi's boss? Is it mueh'zala, right? Because if it is mueh'zala, then that would be interesting to me if Bomsamdi actually was a lackey and it wasn't the case that Bomsamdi was, you know, in a fight with mueh'zala. It'll be very interesting to see. I imagine it could be that maybe Bomsamdi actually is a lackey of mueh'zala, but now Bomsamdi feels like it's finally his time to usurp mueh'zala and get rid of him. Maybe now that mueh'zala is doing some nasty stuff. Kind of hard to say, but suffice to say, Bomsamdi's a really cool character, and I'm really happy that we're going to be seeing more of him, and of course Vol'jin, in this expansion. Okay, next up we've got one that's rather strange, Ysera. Yes, she has a new, blue-eyed for some reason, Shadowlands model. The blue eyes could just be a bug though, but it is kind of strange because when she died in Legion, the cinematic showed her being lifted up into the stars to form this constellation. Shortly after though, we saw her spirit walking towards the void sapling in the heart of the Emerald Dream. So it really is quite weird. Ardenweald is said to be the death version of the Emerald Dream though, so, you know, her being there, that would actually make complete sense, and it would perhaps even suggest a more, I guess, two-way connection between the two, between Ardenweald and the Emerald Dream. But still, a lot of questions here are raised. I mean, Ysera was drawn towards that void flower. Why? What's going on there? Nothing has came of that yet. Then second, what does this mean for the Elune constellation and just what happened in that cinematic? Was that just the cinematics team making something that was visually pleasing, or was it actually lore relevant? Because, like, if it is just a visually pleasing thing, then it's probably not indicative of wider lore. So a bit weird. Right now, though, it seems like that might be the case. I mean, we'll just have to wait and see. Most people's read, though, is that's like Elune taking up Ysera's soul. So either there's going to be more to that than we thought, or Elune didn't take up Ysera's soul. It's kind of hard, though, to work out what's going on there, but it could tie into TYRANDE, so let's move on to her. TYRANDE is going to be a major character in the Ardenweald storyline of this expansion. Now, back in Legion, she actually helped to kill the corrupted Ysera, so I imagine that those two crossing paths would be a pretty important thing. Now, she did this to save the Temple of Elune, only to then see Elune actually save Malfurion, but abandon her people at Teldrassil. She then, of course, became the Night Warrior, right? This dark, vengeance-fueled aspect of Elune. So, personally, right, I suspect we're going to see TYRANDE struggle with that persona, what that means, and vengeance, and I think we'll also learn more about Elune, especially when TYRANDE and Ysera's paths actually meet. Sylvanas, there's no surprises here, she's going to be back. To what end, we don't really know. She is a villain, and Blizzard have said that now even her loyalists have abandoned her. What's odd is that does not actually mesh with her parting words to players in patch 8.2.5, so there are two options there. A, Blizzard just couldn't fit that player choice into this expansion, or B, Sylvanas will do something, and maybe we'll see her in the pre-patch, that is like so dastardly that even her loyalists abandon her. Now, as for her overall goals, right now, we just don't know. We don't really know. It's likely because of her, or down to her, not wanting to be in the oblivion she experienced after her second death at the foot of Icecrown, but certainly this is, you know, her motivations. We will learn more in the expansion, and I imagine that's going to be like a core of this expansion's lore. And speaking of Sylvanas, well, we've also got to cover her pet dog, Nathanos. He will be loyally doing her bidding because he's a good boy, and that's what he does. So there you go. In Shadows Rising, he does attempt to assassinate TYRANDE and Bomsamdi, but seemingly fails. We'll certainly see more of him, but as for now, who knows? He is, I mean, he's just he's the edgy guy, or he's forced cool. I don't know what to say. It's Nathanos. I think he's just an empty void of a character. He doesn't really want to do anything other than serve Sylvanas, so I don't know, yeah, maybe, maybe he'll get a lock of her hair and he'll be happy and he can retire. Who knows? But let's move on. Then finally for Sylvanas, we do have Syra and Dalaran, I think two of her most recent lackeys. Now, Blizzard did confirm that these characters are not mind-controlled, right? That they actually are with Sylvanas out of their free will. And I've got to be real with you, and I've said this before, I don't really think Blizzard made that story be believable, and actually, I still think they pulled it off. But still, these characters likely will be in the Shadowlands. Specifically, though, I think it will make sense for them to be involved in any Elune or TYRANDE-based storylines in Ardenweald. I mean, look at how they were created, right? You know, raised into the undead. Now, those are characters that believe that Elune abandoned them, and I've got to imagine that TYRANDE would have quite an interaction with them based on that, given how she is the living embodiment now of Elune's fury, and maybe is somebody who at some stage could feel a little bit betrayed by Elune. So I think that's going to be a pretty darn major storyline. Alright, so with those more main characters done, let's just talk about a few of the smaller ones. Alexandros Morgraine, yep, he is going to return. The original Ashbringer has been found in the scenario data along with Lady VASHJ, so it'll be interesting to see to what end that's actually done. Then Millhouse and Maleficent are also going to return, as they do tend to do in expansions, and also the Dreadlords are going to be back. Now, look, I've got zero idea if I will see any of the existing Dreadlords, but if you just look at the ruler of Revendreth, he's a Dreadlord, right? So the Dreadlords, the Dreadlore, probably will be updated in this one. And then finally, there's some characters like, say, Saurfang and Varian, and I guess Tyrion as well, who are dead, but they've not been seen in the data mining yet. But still, given the time of their deaths, right, Legion, and how Vol'jin was slurped into almost into the maw at that time, it does make complete sense for those characters to return, to be in the maw, to be rescued by us. I suspect we might see them a bit, maybe around the launch or whatever, but there's also a bit of me that's kind of thinking, would they just hold those characters back for a patch? Because come on, imagine if they, and I know this would totally be the obvious thing to do that would get everyone clapping because they're cool characters, but imagine if, you know, it's patch 9.3, everything's going really bad, Sylvanas' plan is reaching its, you know, its zenith or whatever, and bam, you know, Saurfang and Varian ghosts, I don't know, appear and lead us in some epic way. You know, I don't think that would be the most creative storyline in the world, but certainly if you want to get some claps, that would make sense. But still, those are actually characters of, you know, they're very interesting, right? And their sort of views of honor, their views about their respective factions, and of course how they met in Icecrown Citadel. So actually seeing some sort of interaction between those characters again would be quite nice, especially since Varian, you know, didn't really get to see what happened with Saurfang, how Saurfang actually went out. So I'd say that's, I think, very fruitful storytelling areas. And then to round this off, there is another character who is not being data mined, but could actually appear. That's King Tyrannus Menethil, right? Arthas' father. Now that's interesting for a few different reasons. So, number one, it's Arthas' father. What's going on with Arthas? We're in the Shadowlands. There's that, which is pretty obvious. There's also his daughter, Kalia, right? She's back. She's this new light type of undead. And it was King Tyrannus who actually told us there must always be a Lich King. So he's clearly pretty darn aware of some of the mechanics that are going on with the Shadowlands. And then also, there is this rumor, and actually, you know, just keep an eye on the channel because we do have a video on these pamphlets planned, but apparently the Scarlet Crusade have got this, like, actual secret heir to Lordaeron. So that would be somebody who's related to King Tyrannus, which would be pretty interesting. And then if it did actually turn out that Bolvar and Kalia, you know, that they are the parents of Talia, then I guess that would make her his granddaughter, which would be pretty interesting. So there's actually a lot of ways in which stuff could, yeah, just tie back to the old man who's really, yeah, he sure did have a kid that messed up the entire Warcraft universe. Nice one, Tyrannus. But certainly could be a very interesting character to have back in the lore. So, there you go. That's a big old list of characters. I would love to know, though, is there anyone else you would like to see return? What sort of storylines do you think that these characters have? And I guess, you know, like, there's a lot of people who are going to say, and I do understand it, that it's just Blizzard kind of fan baiting, bringing back characters that, you know, are dead or whatever. And I get that. But do you think for some of those characters, are there actually relevant, interesting to the lore ways that they could come back? And if so, do be sure to let me know. I'd actually love to hear. So that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Check out Skillshare if you want to get some great skills and support the channel. And with that, I'll see you next time.